Welcome back. So far, we've explored how the original Star Trek relied on creativity instead of massive budgets, and how many of its most iconic moments almost look completely different. But the stories we're about to uncover reveal something even more fascinating. Behind the Enterprise's polished bridge were real people facing enormous pressures, unexpected conflicts, and decisions that would shape television history forever. One of the most famous Star Trek myths revolves around the so-called red shirts. Today, the phrase has become shorthand for a character who's almost guaranteed not to survive. But this reputation didn't begin as an intentional joke. During the original series, security personnel and engineering crew members often wore red uniforms, and many of the unnamed crew sent on dangerous away missions happened to belong to those departments. Writers frequently needed to show that an alien world was genuinely dangerous, but they couldn't kill off Captain Kirk, Spock, or Dr. McCoy every week. The unfortunate solution was to sacrifice anonymous crew members. Over time, audiences noticed a pattern, and the red shirt became one of television's most recognizable tropes. Ironically, not every red shirt crew member died, and characters wearing other colors occasionally met similar fates. Still, the nickname stuck, eventually becoming part of pop culture far beyond Star Trek itself. Another remarkable story centers on Leonard Nimoy and his relationship with Spock. Today, it's impossible to imagine anyone else playing a half-Vulcan science officer, but during the show's original run, Nimoy sometimes struggled with the role. While audiences adored Spock, Nimoy worried that Hollywood would only ever see him as one character. The pointed ears, emotionless voice, and distinctive appearance made him instantly recognizable, but also limited other acting opportunities. He later admitted feeling trapped by the character's enormous popularity. Contract negotiations occasionally became tense, and there were moments when it seemed possible he might leave the franchise altogether. Fortunately, Nimoy also understood how much Spock meant to millions of viewers. Rather than walking away, he embraced the role more fully, eventually becoming one of the franchise's strongest creative voices through later films and directing projects. His journey from frustration to acceptance remains one of Hollywood's most fascinating stories about fame. William Shatner's experience was equally unusual. Playing Captain Kirk demanded enormous energy. He appeared in nearly every episode, delivered lengthy speeches, memorized complex scientific dialogue, and often performed physically demanding action scenes. The production schedule left little room for rest. Fellow cast members sometimes joked that Shatner always seemed to know exactly where the camera was pointed, instinctively positioning himself for the strongest shot. Whether admired or criticized, his confidence became one of Kirk's defining traits. Behind the television stations might react. Multiple versions of the scene were reportedly attempted, but William Shatner intentionally exaggerated alternative takes so that the original version would remain the best usable choice. Whether every detail of that story has grown through retelling remains debated, but the episode undeniably became a milestone in television history and reflected Star Trek's willingness to challenge social boundaries. Here's another strange production secret. The Enterprise bridge looked enormous on screen, but off-camera it was surprisingly crowded. Large television cameras, lighting equipment, microphones, cables, and dozens of crew members surrounded the actors during nearly every scene. Moving through the set required careful coordination because one misplaced cable or bumped camera could interrupt filming. The actors often joked that navigating the bridge between takes felt almost as challenging as piloting the fictional starship itself. The show's visual effect department also displayed remarkable ingenuity. Every exterior shot of the Enterprise required painstaking work with physical film. The miniature spacecraft was photographed separately against carefully controlled backgrounds before multiple pieces of film were combined using optical printers. Even a brief sequence lasting only a few seconds could require days of technical work. Unlike today's digital editing, mistakes couldn't simply be corrected with computer software. Every frame demanded patience and precision. One often overlooked reason the original series feels timeless is its optimism. During the turbulent 1960s, audiences watched news filled with political conflict, social unrest, and Cold War tensions. Star Trek imagined something radically different, a future where humanity had largely overcome many of its divisions and worked together to explore the galaxy. That hopeful vision distinguished the series from much of the science fiction that came before it. While the adventures featured alien threats and impossible technologies, the underlying message remained deeply human. Cooperation could achieve extraordinary things. Even the actors didn't fully realize what they were creating. During production, most simply hoped the series would survive another season. None could have predicted that conventions would eventually attract thousands of fans, that multiple feature films would follow, or that entirely new generations would continue discovering Captain Kirk and his crew decades later. What began as an uncertain television experiment evolved into one of the world's largest entertainment franchises. Perhaps that's the weirdest fact of all. The original Star Trek wasn't an instant success. It wasn't the highest-rated program on television. It constantly battled budget problems, skeptical executives, production challenges, and the possibility of cancellation. Yet its greatest strength wasn't expensive special effects or perfect production values. It was imagination. Gene Roddenberry and his talented cast and crew believed audiences were ready for intelligent science fiction that explored philosophy, morality, diplomacy, and hope alongside action and adventure. Nearly 60 years after the Enterprise first left Earth, those stories continue to resonate because they ask timeless questions. What does it mean to be human? How should we treat those who are different from us? Can curiosity overcome fear? Those ideas remain just as meaningful today as they were in 1966. So the next time you watch Captain Kirk step onto the transporter pad, hear Spock calmly offer a logical solution, or listen to Dr. McCoy argue passionately with both of them, remember that behind every unforgettable scene stood an extraordinary group of artists solving impossible problems with limited resources and unlimited imagination. Their creativity transformed a modest television series into a cultural phenomenon that continues to inspire scientists, engineers, writers, filmmakers, and dreamers around the world. And that's our countdown of 15 weird facts you probably didn't know about the original Star Trek. Which fact surprised you the most? Was it the recycled Enterprise corridors, the origin of the Vulcan salute, the truth behind the red shirts, or the incredible story of how fans helped save the series? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your favorite piece of Star Trek history. If you enjoyed exploring these forgotten stories from television's final frontier, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Past Paradise, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another journey into the hidden history behind Hollywood's greatest classics. Until next time, thanks for watching, and as Spock would say, live long and prosper. Scenes, however, the responsibility of carrying a weekly television series placed tremendous pressure on him. Years later, Shatner acknowledged that the workload could be exhausting, especially during the rush production of the third season. Perhaps no behind-the-scenes story is more inspiring than Nichelle Nichols' decision to remain on the show. After the first season, Nichols considered leaving Star Trek to pursue opportunities in musical theater. She enjoyed performing, but wasn't convinced the television series had a long future. Then something extraordinary happened. During a public event, she met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who surprised her by saying he was a devoted fan of Star Trek. He explained that Lieutenant Uhura represented something television had rarely shown before, an intelligent, respected black woman serving as an equal officer aboard a futuristic starship. King encouraged Nichols not to leave because her presence mattered far beyond entertainment. She later said that conversation completely changed her decision. By remaining on the series, Nichols became a powerful symbol of inclusion and later inspired countless future scientists, engineers, astronauts, and television performers. Her influence extended even further after Star Trek ended. In the 1970s, Nichols worked with NASA on recruitment campaigns designed to attract more women and minorities into the astronaut program. Among those inspired during that era were future astronauts who would eventually travel into space themselves. It's one of the rare cases where a television actor directly influenced the future of real-world space exploration. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest reasons Star Trek survived at all. Despite its devoted audience, the original series struggled in the television ratings. NBC executives repeatedly questioned whether the expensive science fiction show deserved renewal. After the second season, cancellation appeared almost certain. Then fans organized something television had rarely witnessed before. Thousands of passionate viewers launched an enormous letter-writing campaign urging NBC to save the Enterprise. Boxes filled with letters arrived at the network from across the United States. Executives couldn't ignore the remarkable public response. Although the show eventually ended after 3 seasons, that campaign earned it another year on the air and demonstrated the growing power of organized fandom. Decades before social media existed, handwritten letters helped save one of television's greatest series. Another little-known fact involves one of the show's most controversial episodes, Plato's Stepchildren. Today, the episode is remembered primarily for featuring one of American television's earliest interracial kisses between Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura. While the scene has become historically significant, filming it created unexpected tension. According to cast members, network officials worried about how certain. Picture this. It's September 1966, and American television audiences are introduced to a strange new science fiction series about a starship exploring distant worlds. The network executives aren't convinced it will last. Critics aren't sure viewers will understand it. The budget is stretched to its limits. The cast is still learning how to work together, and nearly every episode presents a technical challenge that seems impossible to solve. Yet somehow, against all odds, this ambitious little show changes television forever. Nearly 6 decades later, the original Star Trek remains one of the most influential series ever produced. But behind Captain Kirk's heroic speeches, Spock's calm logic, and the Enterprise's legendary missions lies a treasure chest of strange stories that many fans have never heard. Some are hilarious, some are unbelievable, and some reveal just how close the series came to looking completely different. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts from the original 1966 Star Trek that prove reality behind the scenes was often stranger than science fiction itself. One of the strangest secrets begins before the cameras even started rolling. Most viewers know Captain James T. Kirk is the face of the Enterprise, but he wasn't originally supposed to command the ship. The first pilot, the Cage, featured an entirely different captain named Christopher Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter. NBC executives admired the production quality, but believed the episode was too cerebral for mainstream audiences. Instead of giving up, creator Gene Roddenberry made the unusual decision to film an entirely new pilot. Television networks almost never paid for 2 pilots of the same series, making this one of the rare exceptions in TV history. William Shatner was then cast as Captain Kirk, whose energetic personality contrasted sharply with Pike's quieter leadership style. Years later, footage from that rejected pilot was cleverly recycled into the 2-part episode The Menagerie, allowing the original story to become part of official Star Trek history instead of disappearing forever. Speaking of characters almost looking completely different, it's difficult to imagine Spock without his familiar appearance. Yet early production artwork experimented with ideas that now seem almost unbelievable. Some concept sketches imagine him with a much more devilish appearance, including a darker complexion and more dramatic facial features. There were even discussions about giving him red skin, an idea that would have made him appear far more alien than human. Those plans were eventually abandoned because producers worried audiences might react negatively. Instead, Leonard Nimoy wore subtle pointed ears, carefully shaped eyebrows, and understated makeup. Ironically, that simpler design became one of the most recognizable character looks in television history. Sometimes less truly is more. The famous Vulcan salute almost never existed either. During production of the episode Amok Time, Leonard Nimoy felt Vulcans needed a distinctive greeting rather than an ordinary handshake. Drawing from a childhood memory of a traditional Jewish priestly blessing he had witnessed in synagogue, he suggested separating the fingers into the now famous V-shaped gesture. The production team liked the idea, and the salute instantly became part of Vulcan culture. Decades later, people around the world still greet each other with "live long and prosper." Few television props or gestures have ever become so deeply embedded in popular culture, and it all began with one actor contributing a personal memory to his character. Now here's something many viewers never noticed. The Enterprise looked enormous, filled with endless hallways leading to different departments. In reality, the production crew repeatedly used the same corridor set. By moving wall panels, changing decorations, adjusting camera angles, and altering the lighting, the crew convinced audiences they were seeing completely different parts of the ship. One hallway could become engineering in the morning, crew quarters after lunch, and a science corridor before dinner. It was an ingenious solution that saved thousands of dollars while making the Enterprise feel much larger than the studio could actually build. That same creativity extended to the bridge itself. Fans often assumed the blinking lights and flashing computer panels were sophisticated electronics. They weren't. Hidden beneath the consoles were crew members manually operating switches throughout filming. Every blinking light depended on someone crouched out of camera view, flipping switches at just the right moment. The tiny incandescent bulbs generated considerable heat and frequently burned out during production. Between takes, electricians rushed onto the set, replacing bulbs before filming resumed. Those slightly uneven blinking patterns many fans notice today weren't programming errors. They were simply the result of human hands controlling every light individually. Perhaps no effect in Star Trek is more iconic than the transporter. Watching Captain Kirk shimmer away seemed almost magical in 1966, yet the technique behind it was remarkably simple. Instead of using computers, the crew relied on practical photography tricks. Glitter-like particles were photographed against a black background, then combined with footage of the actors through optical printing. Additional lighting effects and carefully synchronized editing completed the illusion. The famous transporter sound, meanwhile, came from audio experimentation, using electronic tones blended together to create something that sounded unlike anything audiences had heard before. Modern visual effects artists often marvel at how convincing these practical techniques remain despite their simplicity. Another fascinating secret involves the Enterprise itself. The 11-foot filming miniature wasn't simply built and forgotten. It required constant maintenance. Because it was photographed repeatedly from different angles, even tiny scratches or damaged paint could become obvious on camera. Crew members regularly climbed ladders to repaint sections, repair small details, and clean the Odell before filming. Lighting specialists also discovered that subtle adjustments dramatically changed its appearance. By carefully controlling shadows and reflections, they made the ship appear much larger and heavier than it actually was. Without computer graphics, every shot depended entirely on craftsmanship and patience. One surprisingly uncomfortable part of filming involved the costumes. Those colorful Starfleet uniforms looked sleek on television, but many actors described them as less than comfortable. The velour fabric trapped heat beneath the bright studio lights, turning long filming days into sweaty endurance tests. William Shatner's Gold Command tunic occasionally faded after repeated washing, requiring replacements or careful color adjustments. Nichelle Nichols later recalled that the mini-dress uniforms, while visually striking, were often impractical during lengthy shoots. Cast members spent hours under hot lights while trying to appear perfectly composed, even as temperatures inside the studio climbed higher and higher. If you've ever wondered why alien planets often look strangely familiar, there's a simple explanation. Budget limitations meant the production frequently reused the same outdoor filming locations around Southern California. With different rock formations, colored lighting, artificial plants, and creative camera angles, one canyon could represent several completely different planets across multiple episodes. What looked like an entirely new alien world to viewers was often the very same hillside visited weeks earlier. The magic came from clever cinematography rather than expensive location scouting. One of Th.